Hey everybody, it's your course director Emily Ray here. Just wanted to go through these portfolio websites that you recently submitted to provide you some positive, productive feedback on how to move them to their next best place. Now I'm going to review all the sites that were submitted from both the online section and the campus cohort, so you guys can take a look at what each group is doing and hopefully get inspired by some of the designs and some of the approaches of your classmates. So first things first, going to take a look here at Nilu's site. So looking at the information available to me above the fold, meaning what's here before I have to start to scroll, I see a couple of things. Clear navigation options, a branding element, and then sort of like a tagline, right? So I get an idea quickly about her being a publicist and then taking brands to new heights. But there's not much else here. So this is your high value real estate area, meaning that this is the only place that you can guarantee that someone's going to take a look at on your site. From here I have options. I can click through to these different pages if I want, or I could scroll if there was somewhere to scroll to, but there's not in this case, or I can click away. So really you want to make a very strong impact right away to let people know who you are and what you can possibly do for them in terms of what you're offering with your media communication skills. So my recommendation here would be to not just have this sort of abstract banner image taking up this space, but identify yourself a little bit more right here on the home page before asking someone to click further to find out more about you. So I'm going to jump next to the About page. Here, just a kind of a short summary about you. What I would suggest here is there's not much content on this page and no content on this page. These two pages could be consolidated into a single area. This site is about you, so it certainly makes sense that the homepage would have information about you there. Curious, this is a really beautiful picture. I'm wondering to what extent that it supports your aspirations in being a publicist, right? And so these are things you need to think about. How am I characterizing myself and my services on the site? And what are the images and the assets that I'm using to support that, right? So next going to go here to services and talks about marketing and branding. One of the things I see a lot is sort of the stacking of information. So we have an element and then some text and then a title, some more text. As opposed to having these one on top of the other, we have all of this available space on the side here. I encourage you guys to explore more complex layouts. Maybe 2 columns might work here. A grid layout would also work nicely. If you can remember back to your editing for the web class, you learned a little bit about formatting this information so that it is easily consumed by your audience. You never want to align paragraph text with center alignment. Your headings and your subheadings, subtitles are fine, but anytime you have more than just a short statement, you want to align that to the left for more easy readability on the page. Jumping, let's see here. So we've got your services, but I don't see any of your projects. So noticeably missing so far from here are any of the demonstrations of your work or your effort. Now, you mentioned being in public relations. It's going to be quite hard for you to perhaps showcase that in terms of any sort of visual output. It's not the same as being a photographer or being a graphic designer where you have a lot of visual deliverables. So in your case, I might expect to see something more like a case study where you are talking about an effect that you had on a certain situation with your public relations work. Under contact, just a simple form here, which is great. But I also encourage you to give a call to action here. Why should people contact you? Help narrow down the wide pool of people that might contact you to a more specific reason. So next up, we're going to go take a look at Viviana's site. She's one of our campus students. So here, very colorful. We have an introduction. We've got a nice image of her here, and then sort of a graphical interpretation of her initials. We've got navigation up here at the top, and as I scroll, I can see, that this looks like it could be a one-page website. So we've got this colorful introduction. It talks about her being in marketing, photography, and graphic design. I really like this image. It's got a lot of vibrancy and busyness, so it's a little bit more difficult to read the text on top of it. So I might encourage something, maybe this image itself is featured over here, and you have something that is a little less busy in terms of like a background altogether. Going to go next to the professional. So here, I can see skill levels in different software areas, which is great. But I personally have a little bit of a hesitancy or a bias towards this kind of display of your skills, because all it does is shows your skill in comparison to one another. So in this case, I know that she knows PowerPoint the best, Wix the second best, and then social media management, but I don't know the ends of this spectrum, right? Is this side beginning and this side is expert? Is this side like I've heard of it, and this side of the spectrum like I'm somewhat familiar with the application? So it gives me no real objective information except to compare your skill level between these things. So, I might go ahead and just list these then as, proficient in Photoshop, Wix expert, PowerPoint expert, or however you want to classify that to allow me to more fully understand what you're trying to say. So portfolio, so here we see examples of the work. I'm going to go ahead and click on one. So I'm clicking and nothing's happening. So I get this grid and I can see there's a lot of stuff here, but nothing that I can explore more fully. As I'm hovering over it, I also see that I have a file name that shows up. If you do not, within these content management systems, put in the actual title or description of a photo, it's going to default in many cases to the file name, which is somewhat nonsensical. So here we have DSC0052, but that does nothing for me to help understand like what I'm seeing here. It also does nothing for you in terms of search engine optimization. So this here, I see this kind of cool logo, but I don't even get to see the full interpretation of that. So it's very limited, and I'm not really quite sure what I'm looking at. So here I have the ability to see more, but see more in just these really small packages. I don't get a full understanding of any of these projects. I need a title and a description fully of what you were doing there. So we've got your experience. Here it's listing, some of the places that you worked. I do want to comment on this background. I really like it. It's textured, it's got a speckle, and the colors like the sort of the coral with the blue. It's not a combination I see regularly on these portfolio sites, but I really enjoy it. So here, let's get in touch. Why? Are you for hire? Do you want to collaborate? Are you just sharing this work to share it? A call to action here would be great. As I'm hovering over these in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, I can see that they are in fact linking out to other locations on the web where I can connect with you via social media, so that's great. A lot of people just forget to link these and they go back to Wix. Overall, this is a really strong start. Your biggest opportunity is right here to more fully detail and showcase your work in a more understandable way. All right, jumping next to Mike Angelo's site. So here we get contact information right at the top. As I hover over these, I can see that they are still linking back to Wix locations, so you'll want to update that. We've got your logo here. We've got the M over the A and then some text. Because it is so small and I can't see it, it's somewhat unusable, right? It's not readable. I'm going to zoom in here. It says unapologetically me. Which is fine and cool, except if I can't see it, it doesn't work, right? So I might save this interpretation or this logo to be able to be displayed in a larger format down here. We see Mike Angelo very clearly here, but then we see it again here. That is a bit redundant, so maybe bring this down, make it bigger. When you are adding images to your portfolio site, you have to think about the relevancy to what it is that you're showing, right? So this is a pretty cool photo of a coffee house scene with that little espresso pod and the pastries, but what does that have to do with Mike? Did you take this picture? Because in this case, it's somewhat unclear, right? You don't want to put these questions out that aren't answered. Kind of scrolling down, this is sort of a placeholder for blog posts that haven't showed up yet. A subscription. Do you have an email newsletter? If you don't, this doesn't make sense. A lot of times when you're starting with a template, they include widgets or different types of content that may or may not work for your scenario, but it's your job if you're going to leverage one of these templates to make sure you're removing things that don't relate. So give a shout, but give a shout about what? We've kind of already talked about this. You need to give a call to action. Who do you want to contact you? Narrow it down. Again, we've got the newsletter here. So redundant, and this is the third time I've seen the social media, but the social media is still linking out to Wix locations. So definitely an opportunity there to customize this content. On the About page, we've got this kind of cool picture. And then a little bit about you. This text is center aligned. You want to left align any paragraph text there. This, seems a bit impersonal, right? This says, I believe, I'll be using my writing, but still we have really no idea and no personalization of who you are. So maybe instead of the VW bus, we see something a bit more personal to give this site a bit more identity. Work history, the I is capitalized in history there. You want to take a look at that. So scrolling down, we see that you have had several positions, right? Which is cool to see your service, but there's no keyword rich content here. Like I really have no idea what you did at any of these locations and how it relates in any meaningful way to what it is that you want to do, right? There's really nothing here besides on the About page that talks a little bit about your writing, right? So what do you do? What is this site about? What are you trying to show us? I don't see any projects here, and so I'm a little lost as to sort of the aim or the scope of this. There's not much about your identity. There's not much about your work. So definitely an opportunity there. Contact. So this is pretty standard. You already have this quite a bit listed out on your homepage. So I'm not sure if you need an entirely separate page for this. Something I like to recommend, especially because you have your contact information up here at the top and then also down here in the footer. So it seems like a lot of redundancy at this point. So you might want to just remove this page altogether in favor of maybe building up this footer with a contact form, which would allow it to be accessible from any page on your website. Next up, we're going to take a look at Paula's. So here, it looks like we've got some sort of placeholder elements. So we know a logo is going to come up here. This, it looks like a tagline of some kind. Not quite sure. In some cases, it kind of looks like it could be a navigational system, but then I've got this navigation too. So, curious as to how this is going to be developed a bit further, moving forward. Here I can see we have the welcome, projects, and contact. As I scroll down, it seems like I have this big placeholder for something, right? Definitely an opportunity here to showcase or feature a piece of work right here on the homepage, so I can immediately get that impact of who you are and what it is that you do. I got a fun picture and then a quote from you over here, which is awesome. Again, I'm going to recommend anytime you have more than 2 lines of text, consider that paragraph text, and you're going to want to left align that for increased readability. Scrolling down, I have a placeholder, it looks like here, for some video. So I can see that this site is a work in progress, and that all of these elements are going to be filled in as we go along. So here you're highlighting each of your projects. I'm going to click on one to see sort of the larger display of this, right? So immediately I have this thumbnail, which is great, and then I get some information, brand logo, company, and the date that you did it. I want to check out this one. So as I open it up, what I'm seeing here is it's loading in a larger version of this. You tell me it's graphic design, and it was a Mother's Day event, and so the project included photo editing, Lightroom, graphic design, Illustrator. So this is fantastic. This is a great example of what I'm hoping you guys can do for all of your projects, which is to more fully contextualize what it is that you did. Why are you showing me this? What is it an example of? It's an example of graphic design, and I used these types of software in my approach or in my solution to this design problem in front of me. Now this helps me more fully understand what you're capable of, because I know that you can do photo editing and graphic design. So for each of you, when you are listing your projects here, don't just show me an image without any information, because I don't know what I'm looking at. I can make assumptions about things, but your portfolio site's not meant to pose unanswered questions. All right, very good, Paula. Next to the contact, so here, get in touch. So we have somewhat of that call to action, ready to let your story be heard, want more info, simply curious, contact me. It's a little, it's a little vague, but it's better than nothing at this point. I know that these are your design services, or this is sort of where your media concentration is. So I'd like to see more, especially on the welcome page or the home page, that talks a little bit about what you do, what your approach is, and what you want to do for others. Just sort of a contrast issue here. We can see this really light gray text. You're definitely going to need to toggle the settings on the color there to give us more contrast in that area. Next up, we're taking a look here at Kristen's site. So this is a very standard Wix template. I see it quite often, and I think it's because on Wix it says, this is a great one for portfolios, and you guys think that that's a nice place to start. I would encourage you to think about, before you choose a template that just is labeled for portfolio, I want you to think about, what is the content that I want to share, and what would be the best way to display that content. Both the blessing and the curse of a template is that it's a starting place, but if it's starting you out with placeholder content that you don't have, it might be hard to fill in the blanks, so to speak, with the site. Now, this is a nice standard template, but for me there's a bit redundancy in the template itself, such as resume, portfolio, my work, my skills. All of that is listed up here, and so to me that offers unnecessarily two ways to get to the same place. So here we've got the brand, Kristen Rodriguez, and then home, resume, portfolio, blog, social media, and contact. This is a great image, very compelling, and the colors in it, right, like match really beautifully the colors that you've used or that you've chosen to use here, within the site itself. We've got a short little paragraph of about you information. You talk about being a social media marketer or striving for that. I might make this picture a little bit bigger so that it borders more fully this text area here, just so there's a bit more balance between those spaces. We've got your contact down here. I can see as I hover over these that they are in fact linking out to the other places online where we can connect, which is good. Going to jump next to your resume. So here we can see that you've got your work experience listed. You've got all of the places that you've worked and how you have made a contribution in your role here. As you learned in your editing for the web class, people don't spend a ton of time reading online. So to the extent that you can make your content more scannable, so instead of these like dense paragraphs of text about your role, can you turn these more into bullet point statements, would be a recommendation there. Here we have your skills. We've got a lot of the Adobe suite and some of Microsoft, which is awesome. I'm glad to see that you have listed these out separately. So instead of saying Adobe Creative Suite, you say Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator. That is important for keyword-rich content, because if I am searching for someone who does social media but who also knows how to use Photoshop, if you were to just list Creative Suite here, then I wouldn't likely match up with your site because it doesn't have that keyword of Photoshop. So it's very important that you guys list those out separately. Jumping next to your portfolio, so here we've got your latest projects, and I can see a variety of things. I'm trying to click on these, and I'm trying to click on them because I want more information. I want there to be more contextualization of what we see. I see sort of the mock-up of the ad, and I see this for Real Deal Tacos, but I have no real understanding of what you're showing me and why. You told me earlier that you want to do social media, but you've showing me graphic design related projects, and I only know that they're graphic design because I'm an instructor. If I was a stranger, then I would have no context to really understand what it is that you're showing me. So for me, there's a bit of a disconnect between you telling me that you want to do social media, but then I'm seeing projects that don't necessarily align with that. And so then the question would be for you, should this portfolio take on more of that social media bend, or is it an educational portfolio, one that's showing your growth over time in a lot of disciplines? These are questions that only you can answer, because in the end, this portfolio site is going to have to be something that serves you professionally. Jumping next to blog. So as this page is loading up, let's see. I'm going to refresh it just to make sure I'm not missing any content. Okay, so it's going to come in here. So I see just one post here. And it looks like it's a bit personal in nature, right? A mom and a student, who knew? And this is really cool. It's like really introducing us to a bigger part of your world. But again, I want you guys to be thinking about, to what extent does this combination of writing, of assets, of a historical resume type experience and bio support like who I want to be moving forward. It's true that all of these things are yours, but what is the overall package that you're putting this in to promote yourself in whatever industry you want to get into? So social media, here I'm looking down, and it's loading in, and I'm seeing some examples, but not really totally sure of what I'm, okay, so for LP Design and Renovation, is this one of your companies? Is it a client? More information is here, is needed here so that I can understand what it is that you're showing me. I like to see this social media here because it supports what we saw in your bio or your introduction early on. And so more contextualization of this project would be great. And then we've got your contact. Why should people contact you? Are you looking to take on new clients? Are you available for work? Do you just, are you into collaboration? Share a little bit more here so that you can get the types of, callbacks or inquiries that support what it is that you want to do. So next up, we're going to look at Andrea. Now this looks somewhat similar to what we saw with Viviana, both in just sort of the bokeh effect on this image, the vibrancy, but also the busyness, right? So there's a lot going on here. Loving this picture of you. It's absolutely fantastic. And you give us a lot right here in this snapshot. So we've got your name, we've got very clear navigation, home, about, gallery, contact, that you're a communication student, and that you love design and motion graphics. Like, you've really given me the highlights here, which is great. I'm a little concerned about a little bit of the busyness of this section here. You've done a nice job of putting this text on top of this white sort of opaque background to make sure that it's clearly read over the sort of the busyness of the background. So you did a nice job with that. I'd like to see something similar to that here. Maybe it's that you're dropping the opacity of this image so it's a little bit darker. So this text, because with this, also with this, it looks like a drop shadow or some sort of 3D effect on it. Again, it makes it, there's a lot going on for the eyes. Kind of scroll down here, we see your featured work. So what I love about this is that when I hover over it, I do get the title, and I do get the description about it, right? And I'm gonna click on the next one. And again, I've got a digital illustration. Now you're letting me know what I'm looking at, and it more fully helps me understand your skill set and what you can offer me. So a watercolor bird, like knowing that you were able to paint this, just tells me a lot more about the depth of your skill set. Let's take a look at this one. So here we have this amazing logo that you created for Lake Worth Longboards. This looks great, right? And really allows me to understand, again, the full scope of your skills. So I'm going to just go here to visit the gallery, see what happens. So here we just see them sort of in a larger thumbnails, which are great. I might like to see, so I do get it when I hover over it, but here, like, if they could be, that's going to autoplay for me since I'm on it. But I might like to see them sort of, instead of in this grid format, right? Maybe featured out a little separately, right? It's kind of overwhelming at this point. What if you just kind of isolated this and then you gave me a title and a little bit more of the description there? Going to jump next to the About Me. So here, super fun pictures of you from our Hall of Fame shoot, which I remember. small little adjustment. I would align the top of this picture with the top of this text here. I like that you have these in different sort of stylized star elements, but it stands out to me because these are sort of hand-drawn, but these look a little bit more just like straight up graphic standard point stars. So a little bit of a discrepancy in the style there. We do have a lot of different typography, so we've got this one associated with your brand, this one here as well, and then we've got your just paragraph text. I might, and stylistically they're a bit different. I might pare it down to two that are a bit more complementary of each other. Last but not least, I'm going to jump to contact. Just get in touch, write me a message. What should we write you a message about? Get a little bit more specific here so you're getting the types of contacts that you would like to. Overall, like, this is really, really strong. Would like to maybe work with you a bit more on kind of clearing some space to really feature the power and the depth of your work. So here we're looking at John's site, but the brand itself is Bright Path Consulting Group. We've got an image here sort of in place of the logo, so you'll want to design something that's graphical here, so like an image is not a logo. And in this case, it might be that you just have a text-based logo if you don't have anything here that represents sort of the imagery or the logo mark that you want to. I have a bit of a disconnect between, we've got the Bright Path Consulting Group, which is somewhat plural in its appearance, right? That there's more people involved in this group. But then I have the contact for a single person up here, and it's a personal Gmail, right? So for me, that's a bit of a disconnect. Just in terms of, well, that's inconsistent with group versus individual. As I'm hovering over these elements, I can in fact see that they are linking out to Wix. So if you don't have social media associated with this brand, you'll want to remove those altogether. We've got home and blog. We're going to check these out. So as I'm scrolling, I can see the content to introduce us to this group. I'd say this is pretty big, that it's wrapping onto 3 lines here. I might lower the size of this so that it's just really on 2 lines. I'm having to scroll quite a bit to get to just this little bit of content. You're making me do, a bit of work to find out, just a little bit more about this group. We've got some different colors of the blue here, wondering if that's purposeful because it's so close, that it causes me to question if that's purposeful or not. As I'm scrolling down, another thing that I'm noticing is, we have this sort of sticky header, meaning that it stays in place, and it's taking up a good, 25% of the screen up here, and that, like, if I kind of draw out this space, this is the only viewable window that I have. So I would say probably, maybe 60% of the screen is where I'm viewing the content, and it feels like I'm only just kind of getting a peek as it's scrolling through this smaller window. We've got more of the about text here with strategic planning and advising. I like the very business type imagery that you've included here. But it's a little difficult to read, especially this, the text over top of this image, the white text. And I think white text is going to be your best bet for contrast. It's just that the busyness of the image, and there's a lot of white, I might drop the opacity of this to make it a little bit darker, so that text pops out a little bit more. Because if you can't read it, it's not usable. So about the business, anywhere you have a couple lines of text, you're going to want to left align that just for easy readability. We've got a video placeholder here, so there's several places on the site that has placeholder content. Curious as to your intention or what will be added here moving forward. And then a contact us, right? So, again, we've got sort of contact us. This is the plural, but it's going to just this individual. So, curious as to your thoughts on sort of solidifying the identity there. Here we've got what looks like to be some featured blog posts. When I click on these though, what I do see is that we've got an image and then some coming soon information. So curious as to how you envision leveraging this blog moving forward. Right now it's a bunch of placeholder content, with some business related images. Overall, I think that the structure of this is here. There's some design and style elements to note, but really what's needed is more of a content strategy for what type of content can you share on this site that helps support your aims and goals for this as a business. All right, next up we are taking a look at Casper's site, or Calvin. So one of the things here that I notice is we got just this really small interpretation of your logo here. And then no other real identifying information, right? There's not even really anything else that says Casper. So, hopefully one day soon this is going to be like universal. People will be able to recognize this like Nike swoosh, right? Or the McDonald's arches, and it'll just be iconic like that. But right now, it leaves some questions as to the identity of the site. So maybe I'd like to see, even just like Casper Films or Casper Media Production, just something that's written out so that I can more easily understand what's the site that I'm looking at. I can see here that your Facebook is linking out to Casper Films. So what I might do is I might put up here in the header, I might put Casper Films. I have the navigation, and then I have this logo, like in a, or maybe the logo, kind of comes up here, right? Definitely lots that you can do. I want to see a bit more identity. We've got, this sort of classic picture of you and your gear with, talking about your projects. This says a little bit about me, but there really doesn't say much about you. It says welcome. I can find some of your work here, some of your projects, you're committed to this, and then an invitation to browse the site. There's not much about you. I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. This image is compelling, and I want to know who this guy is. So scrolling down, I see some of your work. As I was loading the site, I can see that as I hovered over, it starts to play, autoplay, which is fine because we can start to see some of the editing that you do, but there's not really much here. So it doesn't say Casper Films anywhere, and it says here are some of my projects, and I'm committed to the arts. And then I can somewhat kind of hover over this work to see it come in, but I still don't know what you do. If I didn't know you, I wouldn't know that you do, that you're a video editor. Like here I see a couple cameras, or that you shoot this stuff yourself. So more contextualization. And we've got your work here, but these little small windows I don't think are the best way to view it, right? Because if I go nowhere else, if I don't go out and see the full version on YouTube, I'm not getting the full grandeur of what I'm seeing. So instead of kind of going grid here, I might do like a version of this where it's about this big, and then over here I give the title, the description of the piece, and then everything I did on it, so that I can fully know that you shot it, that you edited it, that you did all of the sound mixing and the special effects, right? I need to know more fully about these projects. Scrolling down, we've got your mission. I might say, so my mission statement, maybe just put, it's interesting. I'm pausing because I'm trying to think of sort of another way that you could interpret this. Maybe up here it just says mission. My mission statement sounds a little bit like, I don't know, like this, it almost looks like you've set this up like a quote, but it doesn't read like a quote. And so maybe that's what's throwing me a little bit here. Super like this image of you here. You've got great pictures of you doing what you do. Contact, why should people contact you? You say contact below for a quote. I might put that down here, right? So if this is the section that just talks about your mission statement, let this be where you talk about contacting for a quote. And a quote on what, right? Like what are your services? I'm still unclear on that from what I see here on the site. I mean, overall, I know what you do, but a stranger doesn't, right? So definitely want to more fully contextualize, the ways that you bring value through your media work. All right, so we jump in next to Anthony. So here, strong brand right up at the top, home, resume, contact. We've got this image, kind of curious and fun, and then we've got just a little bit of the about you, talking about your work, graphic design, web design, and places that we can connect with you and other places online, which is great. What I would do is I would move this image so that it aligns with the top of this text a little bit more, and then I would crop it to such that it bordered this entire amount of text. I would put a little more spacing in between these elements. It looks a little crowded, shall we say, as everything is stacked on top of each other without breathing room, right? So think about that padding around each of the elements. Here we see some examples of your projects. I'm trying to click on them to see if I can get more information or to see them in a bigger view. I know that this is an ad that you did for graphic design, and not quite sure what this is, but I know that this is something you did for your editing for the web class, right? But nobody else in the world knows what they're looking at, right? They might even think that these are just ads that you're placing on your site to get ad revenue, maybe. So what am I looking at? Is this an example of graphic design? What were the tools that you used? What was the project? Is this a business card? Is it, a magazine ad? Let us know so that we can more fully understand these projects and the skills that you bring to them. So we can follow you on Facebook, give you a call. I like this, right? So it definitely has a call to action with each of these, and I appreciate the way, kind of the fun little icons that you've included. I'm going to go next to your resume. So here, taking a look, one of the things that I notice is it seems like the content itself is shifted over here really far to the left-hand side, and I'm guessing that's because this is how big the page is, and that you have it aligned to the left, which is all fine. But it looks a little off balance because none of your lines really extend that far. I would keep it all aligned to the left here, but on this page, if you can, I would reduce the width of this so it is aligning a bit more, balanced on the page. I don't want to say center aligned because I like that everything is left aligned. Because it's more scannable, right? When we think about that F-shaped pattern that we all view things online, this adheres to that, but it's kind of shifting far out this way. If you could just keep it formatted to the left, but then bring it a little more center. Contact, so next just a simple contact form, and then we've got just a business card, and it's another cool photo over here. On your homepage, you give us these call to actions, which are great. I might, if you could, consider putting this information within the footer of the page so that it's visible on every page. It seems like to me you could possibly go for a one-page design at this point instead of breaking this out into 3. It works as 3, but it could also work as 1 if that intrigues you as a layout possibility. Next up, we are going to take a look here at Trevor's site. So here at the top, we see sort of a dynamic motion of the Golden Gate Bridge. This is a bit confusing for me because we've got the Golden Gate Bridge, which is California, and then you say that you're from beautiful Atlanta, Georgia, right? So for me, that's a big disconnect. And what it tells me is that this is a Wix template and that this is the video that they included in this template. But you have to think, like, it's cool, but does it match what it is that you're trying to do or that who you say that you are? This sort of like aqua green color, I like it, but as you can see, at certain points, it doesn't really offer the best contrast. It looks great over this dark, but over the white and some of this, the lighter gray, the contrast isn't there, and it makes it a bit harder to read. One thing too is that we don't have any branding or identity up here in the header, right? We've got it in this banner, but then it goes away. So now basically the site is identityless, right? So there's no identity. It doesn't say Trevor. It doesn't even have this sort of logo initial thing here. So instead of having your social media, which appears still linking to Wix, so it's useless in terms of connecting to you elsewhere online, I would go ahead and have your name listed up here. We've got about me. So again, just a little bit of a short bio and your ambitions to do marketing and advertising. All caps is great for a heading or a subheading, but as far as paragraph text goes, it makes it extremely difficult to read. This looks more like a word search, right? Like where I'm gonna like circle the letters to find a word. So you want to go ahead and have this be sentence case, right? So capitalize in the beginning and then have it only capitalized with proper nouns from there. Scrolling down. So here we see New York City. So again, think about the relevancy of the images that you're choosing to show and why. So create, storytell, branding. I'm going to click on this and nothing happens. So when you have these rectangle elements and the color goes in and out, it's almost, and watch how my cursor turns into a hand, that is sort of indicative that this is a link or a button and I can click on it to do something. So this does not follow through with the functionality. And the other thing is that contextually create, storytell, and branding, I don't really know how that matches marketing and advertising just yet, right? So you certainly you will need these things in your role in marketing and advertising, but there's just no connective tissue, so to speak, of how that's going to work. So here we have some examples of your projects, which are cool. I'm going to click on one and I'm going to see it, and as it's loading up, kind of a Warhol effect. I enjoy the artwork, but don't have any context to understand why you're showing this to me. Is it an ad? Is it a marketing project? Or is it an example of graphic design? And if so, is that important to show on your advertising and marketing portfolio website? It could well be. You have to think about this in terms of the content strategy that you want to support who you are and what it is that you're going to do in media communications, right? So here I see an infographic, right? But I, don't really know other than that what I'm looking at. Title, description of your work, why you created what you did, what were the tools you used for that. That's what we're looking for here with each of your projects, right? Get in touch. We've got your contact information and ways that we can connect. These are, again, still linking to Wix, so it's definitely an opportunity for you to update that with your own personal info. So we're going to jump around here with the navigation, right? So kind of interestingly, we have a one-pager except for resume. So that's kind of like, it all of a sudden takes me somewhere else. I would definitely consider not having this jump to a separate page, but in fact somehow working this into the one-pager format that you have established with these other pages. You've got the start of some great content here, but a bit more like thought and intention needs to go into sort of your content strategy moving forward. But the good news is, guys, that this is just the start of your journey with this portfolio website, and you're going to continue to work on it quite a bit as you continue through the media communications program. All right, let's see here. Next up, we have Jesse's site. So we've got a logo element up here at the top. I would encourage you to put your name up here as well in this sticky header so that as we continue to explore, your name and your identity stays front and center. We've got this image here of New York City in the background. So that's a Wix standard, right? As you guys continue to build out these portfolios, I encourage you to swap out all of the template assets with your own work. So here we get a short bit of contact information. I would go ahead and remove any sort of date of birth info. You don't want anybody to discriminate against you based on your age. And then we've got these other places that we can connect with you on social media, which is great. That you're linking out to those areas. We've got a little bit of an introduction about you. Again, anytime you have paragraph text, you're going to want to left align that and not have it be center aligned. Talks about the graphics that you do and where we can see your work. And right here, it says work that I offer. I don't really see much in terms of a service listing, right? So you do small graphics for these types of things, but like, how would you characterize that? Are you a graphic designer? Are you, what is the service that we can discuss payment about is what I'm asking. Your experience. So here we get a little bit of your background as far as work goes. This is pretty colloquial, and by colloquial I mean that it reads as one would discuss it, right? But here in a resume section or an experience section, basically having you list these out as like short statements of both your responsibilities, but also the impact that you made in this role would also be great. So something to think about, Jesse, is we've got all of this sales experience. This one's bold, these two aren't. You want to be consistent with that. So you've got all of this sales experience, but how does that fit into the graphics work that you want to do? So I need for you to be thinking about how can I present information here that supports the work I want to do moving forward, and come up with a strategy for that. So here we have your education, where you have spent some time learning your craft, which is great. Again, when you have some college level work, I definitely don't think that your high school is pertinent at that point. Here we've got your skills. So we've got Photoshop, and some of the other Adobe Suite and some Microsoft, which is great. We've got your portfolio. And so I'm seeing these small bits of graphic work, but I don't have any context to understand. This is what you created for your graphic design class. But like if I try to click on it to view a larger version, maybe so that I could read this text and more fully understand, it isn't there. So this isn't the best display of this. It doesn't give me any of the context to understand what you created, why, and how. Scrolling down, we've got the contact here. Notice how it is a little bit more difficult, obviously, to read the text on the busyness of this background. You've done a nice job of including the white around it so that it is in fact visible, but I do think that there's a much better approach that you can do, either by lowering the opacity of this picture, making it less high contrast, or choosing something that's less busy altogether. So definitely an opportunity here on the site to think about how do you align your skills and experience with the type of work that you want to do moving forward. If you're going to stay in sales, how important is it to have a portfolio website? Maybe there's some way that you can turn your sales experience into infographics so that if you go get a new sales job, you can send someone to your personal website to say, take a look, this is my data over time. Look how I'm kicking butt out there on the sales floor as demonstrated by this great graphical data. That might be a way that you can tie that together if in fact that's how you want to leverage this moving forward. This is a question that each of you is going to have to answer individually. So you have to say, how can I use this as a tool for what it is that I want to do? All right, next up, let's see. We've already gone through Trevor's. I want to make sure that I got everybody over in this line. Yes, 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 yes. Okay. All right, so next up then on this, we have Anissa. So here, just kind of a very compelling image to start out, and then we have the ability to go ahead and enter the site. Here, we've got your branding information up at the top. It looks crowded in this black box. My encouragement would be to either give it some more breathing room on the edges here. See how much space you have at the bottom and the top. Give that on the sides as well. Or you could just have this be black text on the white, and so it would have plenty of breathing room. The welcome was that compelling image. Here we are on straight to portfolio. So I'm seeing a bit of your work. I'm going to go ahead and click on it. It's going to bring it up in a light box for me. I see this image, but I have no context to understand the image. Is it an ad that you were a creative director for? Are you a photographer and you're showing us your photography skills? Are you a graphic designer and you are showing me a logo that you created? Is it any combination of these things? What was the project? What was your unique approach? what were all the roles that you played or the skills that you used, and what was the software that you used to create what you did, right? So there's some pretty cool stuff here, but I have no context to understand what I'm looking at or how it supports, who you are and what you do. I get this, I get your name, I get a really cool image. I'm not really sure that that's you at this point because there's nothing that really solidifies that for me. Here I have your resume information. A lot of great keyword-rich content here, which is fantastic and kind of highlights your experience in all of these areas. I can understand more fully now that you're into production and social media. But then that makes me curious as to how do these projects fit in, right? Because if this is graphic design related stuff or web, how does that fit into what you do with production and social media? Again, what you share here should present a solid picture of who you are and what you can do. So about me. So we have just a nice image and a little bit of a background of what you do in the industry, and you talk about being passionate for social media. So for social media, there's less visual things that you can do unless you're showcasing a case study, so the impact that your work had on a particular client or project. You could show sort of the collection of content maybe that you've created and shared over social media. You can share the analytics of a campaign to show your efficiency in that area. There's a lot that you can do there, especially to kind of highlight what you're able to do in that realm. Going to go next to the blog. So here, there's not much, right? So I don't fully understand what I'm looking at or why. So this is about me, my life, my feelings, my lifestyle, the obstacles I deal with every day. So is this a personal blog on a professional portfolio website? Does that make sense to share something that's so personal on your professional site? Again, only you can answer this question. Is this is your professional identity separate from your personal one? Is it an integrated experience? And how is the content that you're going to share here support your overall professional goals for this site? I've got your contacts, so just a little bit of, we got a contact form and then your email. Why should people contact you? We see, some images here. It looks like it's bringing in from your Instagram, which is great. But we've got a lot of very similar imagery popping through here. So maybe a little bit of redundancy in terms of the visual aspect at this point. So again, how does sharing this support your overall aims and objectives? Content strategy, it seems like is going to be a big focus between now and the next time you guys revisit these sites. So I think this is the last but not least. We've got Eric's site here, and we had a little bit of a conversation about this moving forward, to help Eric move forward. He's got some pretty incredible experience and goals and objectives for how he wants to use his media. So as we can see here, he is a storm chaser, which is awesome. And if this is your footage, it's pretty much incredible that you were that close, and also very scary, but also cool. There's a lot happening here. I'm super compelled by the imagery in the background, but because it's as sort of chaotic and busy as it is, I'm just like riveted by it, but I'm not looking at anything else on the screen. I can see that we've got your branding up here at the top, so EB, media and marketing, but then I see it again here, so a bit of redundancy there. Photography, videography, social media. There needs to be some spaces here, so like spread this out a little bit, especially after the commas. You can see how the gray text gets lost as the imagery behind it changes. Here it looks good, but then here it's a little more obscured. So the color scheme as well. So we've got sort of this like apple green or Kelly green, and then maybe this is more of like an apple. So, you know, we've got a few color schemes going on here. It's hard to read this text, right? So the busyness of the background has made it such that this is difficult. If I can't read the content, it's not usable, because why share this text if you don't want somebody to read it, right? So you need to be thinking about, is this the best interpretation or layout to facilitate all of my content being absorbed? What I would say is, because your logo says media and marketing, this is redundant up here at the top. You can remove this, put your navigation up here. I would then focus on having your header information on a solid background so it's clearly seen and visible, and then maybe have a big banner that's showing this video, or have a banner, and in the banner we have this quote on top of a solid color background, and then we just have this video, right, that talks, or not talks, but shows sort of your ambitions with weather and media. So here is the home page, gallery. As you can see, we've got not enough contrast to even really be able to see our choices. As I hover over them, I can see them, but you are making too great of an assumption that I'm going to hover over them to see them. Make it easily seen at first, right? Not only on the hover. So I'm going to go ahead and just randomly select this one to see the gallery. So again, we've got sort of a dynamic background moving in. I'm going to go ahead and select one of these. And so we've got some pretty cool photography here. As I'm taking a look at it, it looks so we have number 1, and then we have IMG_9705. As you can see, if you're not going in and purposefully titling these and giving them image descriptions in Wix, because I think that's what it is that you're using, Build Your Site, it's going to default to the file name, and you're losing an opportunity for keyword-rich content and for contextualization, right? Like, I don't know what I'm looking at, like, so maybe you can tell me, and that's going to help me connect with your work in a larger way. So we've got a lot of imagery here. So, so this is the photography. Here under About, Weather and Media, and it looks like it's playing a track, right? You never want to default to having any sort of music or audio. You never know where somebody is viewing this and what their audio capabilities are at that moment, right? So if I'm working in a cubicle and I don't have earbuds in, and then all of a sudden this comes on, then I have a great faux pas in the office, right, of disturbing the work environment because of the audio that's auto playing. You want that to be a choice for your viewer. And so definitely something to consider moving forward. And that's the same with auto playing on your videos, you guys. It is the user's choice to press play. You need to make it compelling enough that they want to, both in terms of your thumbnail selection, but also you know, with the title and the description. If I'm busy and I can only look at a couple of things, your thumbnail, the title, and description is going to steer me as to what I'm going to look at. Here we have a large bit of paragraph text, so it's a dense block of text, and it's going to require some focus and concentration for me to read this because of the boldness of the text, but then also that background, which is cool but distracting to the aim of being able to comprehend all of this. Can you break this up into different shorter paragraphs with headings or subheadings, like a call out section or a pull quote, just to make sure that you're facilitating more of that scanning behavior. So here we've got links. Stylistically, these are all caps. Gallery, About, Home is in all caps. This is title case, title case. You want to be consistent there. Links. So here it looks like just sort of your social media. So here I can connect with you on LinkedIn. Curious as to why it's not just an icon down here. These are all still, in fact, linking to Wix locations. So maybe you just put a LinkedIn one down here, or Alternatively, you've got your contact information up here, and then I saw it on the bottom of the About page, but what if you put it in the footer so it's available on every page as well as your social media links? And then that would alleviate the need for this page with very little content. Blogs and videos. So here, we've got, so it looks like your school blog, right? So questioning again, does it make sense if you have this professional identity, EB Media and Marketing, to have your school blog? Maybe it does. Maybe part of your brand is like lifelong learning and just showing that you're constantly improving your skills. But maybe it's not. Maybe your school blog stays separate from your professional entity. If this was an educational portfolio just designed to show sort of a collection of skills and growth over time, maybe that makes sense. It's definitely something that you guys are going to need to think about individually. And I guess that's probably my biggest piece of feedback for this group and what I've seen is understanding the importance of a content strategy based on who you are. And just all of a sudden had this really intense track started playing when I went to this page. Not sure if the recording caught that or not, but again, the individualization, the necessary individualization of these portfolio efforts to help you, achieve the goals that you have in media. Just going to click through these really quick to make sure that we touched on everybody's site and that everybody got some feedback to help evolve this portfolio effort to its next best place. These are all great, and you are all exactly where you need to be at this point in the MCBS program. You will be continuing to work on these over time, so please take this feedback, and if you can, very immediately start to apply some of these thoughts and ideas so they don't get lost between now and the next time you pick this up. If you guys have questions, let me know, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on these.